The day my son learned you don't abandon the woman who raised you. My name is Mary, I'm 69 years old, and let me tell you something about revenge. It's a dish best served by an old woman who knows exactly where all the bodies are buried. Before we dive into this story, if you're enjoying what you're hearing, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. And drop a comment below telling me where you're listening from. I love hearing from folks all around the world. Now, settle in with your coffee or tea, because what I'm about to tell you is going to make your blood boil and your heart sing all at once. We're gone for good. 4 words. That's all my son Daniel gave me after 37 years of sacrifice, sleepless nights, and unconditional love. For a word sent through a cold, impersonal text message at 7:30 on a Tuesday morning. I was standing in my kitchen, the same kitchen where I'd made him countless breakfasts before school, packed thousands of lunches, and baked his favorite chocolate chip cookies every Sunday for years. My hands were shaking as I held that phone, reading those words over and over, hoping somehow I'd misunderstood. But there was no misunderstanding. Daniel, my only child, the boy I'd raised alone after his father walked out when he was just 3 years old, was cutting me out of his life. And he was taking my grandchildren with him, Emma, age 7, and little Joshua, just 5 years old. The we in his message wasn't just him and his wife Patricia. It was my entire family, disappearing like smoke. I want you to understand something. I wasn't a perfect mother, I don't think any mother is. But I worked 2 jobs to put Daniel through college. When he lost his first job, who paid his rent for 6 months? When he and Patricia needed a down payment for their house, who took out a second mortgage on the home I'd almost paid off? When Emma was born premature and needed special care, who took unpaid leave from my job to help Patricia with night feedings because Daniel was too stressed to function on less sleep? Me. Always me. Mary. The woman who apparently didn't deserve even a phone call, let alone a face-to-face conversation. I sat down at my kitchen table, that text message burning into my retinas, and I thought about everything that had led to this moment. The tension had been building for months, maybe years if I'm honest. Patricia had never really liked me. I could see it in her eyes during family dinners, the way she'd stiffen when I offered advice, how she'd redirect conversations when I tried to connect with my grandchildren. And Daniel, my sweet Daniel, had slowly been pulled into her orbit, away from me. The final straw, apparently, had been Thanksgiving 3 months earlier. I'd spent 2 days cooking, turkey, stuffing, 3 kinds of pie, all of Daniel's favorites. When they arrived 2 hours late, the food was cold. Patricia made a comment about how some people need to learn that the world doesn't revolve around them, that they had other commitments. I'd bitten my tongue, reheated everything, and tried to salvage the day. But when I gently suggested they could have called to let me know they'd be late, Patricia exploded. She called me controlling. Manipulative. Said I used guilt to get my way, that I couldn't accept that Daniel had his own family now. Daniel just sat there, saying nothing, while his wife eviscerated me in my own home. The children looked frightened. I asked them to leave, my voice barely above a whisper, and they did. That was the last time I saw any of them. Until today. The day after that text message. You want to know what I replied? Okay, good luck. 2 words. Because if 37 years of love could be dismissed with 4 words, he'd get 2 back from me. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to plead. I was done. After I sent that message, I did exactly what I told you at the beginning. I went to the bank and stopped all the automatic transfers I'd been making to Daniel's account, $500 every month for the past 8 years to help with expenses. I canceled the credit card I'd given him for emergencies that somehow always seemed to happen. I changed the locks on my house because Patricia had a key, and God knows I didn't trust her not to come take things she thought she deserved. I called my lawyer and made an appointment for the following week to change my will. Then I went to bed and cried myself to sleep, grieving the loss of my son and grandchildren like they'd died, because in a way, they had. The next morning, I woke to aggressive pounding on my door. It was barely 7 a.m. My heart raced. Had something happened to the children? Despite everything, they were still my grandchildren. I threw on my robe and rushed to the door, only to find 2 police officers standing on my porch. "Mary Henderson?" the older officer asked, his face stern. "Yes, that's me." "What's wrong? Are the children okay?" "Ma'am, we need to ask you some questions about your son, Daniel Henderson, and your daughter-in-law, Patricia Henderson." My stomach dropped. "What about them? Are they hurt?" The younger officer glanced at his partner. "Ma'am, can we come inside?" I led them to my living room, my mind racing through terrible scenarios. A car accident. A break-in. Something with the kids. But when we sat down, the older officer pulled out a notebook and said something I never expected. "Ma'am, your son and daughter-in-law have filed a police report claiming you've been financially exploiting them and that you've made threatening statements. They're also claiming you showed up at their house last night and tried to force your way in, and that you've been harassing them." I actually laughed. Not a happy laugh, a shocked, disbelieving laugh that made both officers look at me strangely. "I'm sorry," I said, getting myself under control. "But that's absurd. I haven't seen them in 3 months. I haven't been to their house. And threatening? I've never threatened anyone in my life. Can you account for your whereabouts yesterday evening between 6 and 9 p.m.? I was here. All day. After I received a text message from my son yesterday morning telling me he was cutting me out of his life. We're gone for good, is what he said. I spent the day handling my financial affairs and then I went to bed early. I was alone, so no, I don't have an alibi if that's what you're asking." The younger officer leaned forward. "Mrs. Henderson, they're claiming you've been giving them money with strings attached and using it to control their lives. Is it true you've been giving them financial support?" "Yes, I have. $500 a month for almost 8 years, plus I helped with their down payment, I paid for Emma's medical bills, I bought Joshua's bedroom furniture, the list goes on. But I never asked for anything in return except to be part of my grandchildren's lives. There were no strings, officer. Just a mother trying to help her son. And yesterday you cut off that support?" "I stopped the automatic payments, yes. He told me he was gone for good. I took him at his word." I looked between both officers. "Wait, when did I supposedly show up at their house making threats?" The older officer checked his notes. "They claim you arrived at approximately 7:30 last night, demanding to see the children, and when they refused, you threatened to make them regret this and take everything from them." I stood up and walked to my desk, pulling out my cell phone. "Officers, I can show you my location history. I never left this house yesterday. And more importantly, I grabbed a folder from my desk drawer. I have something you need to see." What I showed them next changed everything. You see, I may be 69 years old, but I'm not senile and I'm not stupid. When Patricia started making those accusations at Thanksgiving, calling me manipulative and controlling, something in my gut told me I needed to protect myself. So I did what any smart woman would do in the 21st century. I documented everything. I showed those officers 8 years of bank statements, every single transfer highlighted and noted. Every payment I'd made for them, every bill I'd covered, every gift. I showed them text messages from Daniel, hundreds of them, thanking me, asking for help, promising to pay me back someday. Not once was there any indication I'd used money to control them. Just a son asking his mother for help and a mother giving it freely. Then I showed them the doorbell camera footage. Yes, the same doorbell camera Daniel had installed for me 3 years ago for my safety. The camera that showed me leaving my house at 9 a.m. yesterday to go to the bank, returning at 11, and never leaving again. Time-stamped, clear as day. The older officer's expression changed as he reviewed the footage on my tablet. "Mrs. Henderson, is it possible your son doesn't know about this camera?" "He installed it himself, officer. He has access to the account." "But you changed your locks yesterday?" "I changed my locks because my daughter-in-law has a key to my house, and after that text message, I didn't feel comfortable with her having access to my home." "That's my right, isn't it?" Both officers exchanged glances. The younger one cleared his throat. "Mrs. Henderson, would you be willing to come down to the station and make a formal statement? Because if what you're showing us is accurate, and it appears to be, then your son and daughter-in-law may have filed a false police report. And that's when I understood. Daniel wasn't hoping the police would find me guilty of harassment or threats. He was hoping they'd find me guilty of financial exploitation. In our state, financial exploitation of a family member is a serious crime, and if convicted, the victim can sue for damages, including all the money that was exploited from them. Patricia had researched this. She'd convinced Daniel that all the money I'd given them over the years wasn't gifts from a loving mother, it was exploitation, manipulation, control. And if they could convince the police, convince a judge, they'd not only be free of me, they'd be entitled to potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars. The house down payment alone was $60,000. The monthly payments added up to over $48,000. Medical bills, furniture, car repairs, emergency expenses, I'd given them over $150,000 in 8 years. In Patricia's mind, that was money they could take from me by crying victim. But she'd made one critical mistake. She'd made Daniel lie about something that could be easily disproven. That visit that never happened. That threat I never made. And that gave me the leverage I needed. I went to the police station. I made my statement. I provided all my documentation. And then I did something that Daniel and Patricia never saw coming. I pressed charges for filing a false police report. I also called my lawyer and initiated a civil suit for defamation of character and emotional distress. The next few weeks were a blur of legal proceedings. Daniel tried to call me. Suddenly, he could use the phone instead of sending texts. I didn't answer. Patricia tried to come to my house. My new locks kept her out, and my doorbell camera caught her screaming obscenities at my front door, which my lawyer added to our evidence file. Their story fell apart quickly under scrutiny. The police investigated and found no evidence I'd ever been to their home that night, no witnesses, no camera footage from neighbors, nothing. What they did find was that Patricia had been researching financial exploitation of elderly family members on her computer for 3 months. They found text messages between Patricia and her sister discussing how much money they might be able to get from the old lady if they played their cards right. My son, my own son, had gone along with it. Maybe Patricia had manipulated him. Maybe he'd wanted to believe it because it was easier than admitting he'd been taking advantage of his mother's generosity for years. I don't know. And sitting here now, I'm not sure I care to know. The charges against them for filing a false report were processed. Daniel and Patricia each faced fines and community service. They hired a lawyer to fight my civil suit, but their lawyer advised them to settle when he saw the evidence. They settled for $30,000, not nearly what they'd tried to steal from me, but enough to sting. Enough to make a point. But the real revenge, the revenge that made all of this worth it, came from an unexpected source. Patricia worked as a real estate agent. Her business depended on her reputation, on people trusting her. When word got out in our small town about what she'd done, trying to frame an elderly woman for exploitation to steal her money, her business dried up overnight. People talked. They always do in small towns. And nobody wants a real estate agent they can't trust. Daniel worked in insurance, and while he didn't lose his job, the story followed him. Co-workers who'd heard him talk proudly about his mother for years now looked at him differently. How do you face people who know you tried to betray the woman who sacrificed everything for you? They had to sell the house, the one I'd helped them buy. Couldn't afford the mortgage on Patricia's reduced income. The last I heard, they'd moved 3 towns over to get a fresh start. And my grandchildren? That's the part that breaks my heart. Emma is 9 now, Joshua is 7. I haven't seen them in almost 2 years. But I sleep at night knowing that one day they'll be old enough to ask questions. One day they'll be old enough to look up court records, to read the truth, to understand what really happened. And when that day comes, they'll know their grandmother loved them. They'll know I fought to protect myself not out of spite, but out of self-preservation. And they'll have to reconcile that with whatever story their parents have told them. Maybe they'll reach out. Maybe they won't. I've made peace with either outcome. As for me, I'm doing fine. Better than fine, actually. I joined a book club. I volunteer at the local animal shelter 3 days a week. I've made new friends who value me for who I am, not for what I can give them. My savings account is actually growing for the first time in almost a decade. I'm planning a trip to Italy next spring, something I'd always wanted to do but kept putting off because Daniel might need something. I learned something important through all of this. Sometimes the people who hurt us most are the ones we love most. And sometimes, protecting yourself isn't revenge, it's survival. What they called revenge was simply me refusing to be a victim. I didn't destroy their lives. I didn't spread lies. I simply told the truth and let the consequences fall where they may. The real revenge, if you want to call it that, is that I'm happy now. Genuinely happy, in a way I haven't been for years. Because I'm not constantly worrying about Daniel's next crisis, Patricia's next demand, or walking on eggshells trying to maintain a relationship with people who didn't truly value me. I'm free. So when people in town whisper about the Henderson family drama, when they ask me if I regret how things turned out, I tell them the truth. I regret that my son chose greed over love. I regret that my grandchildren are caught in the middle. But I don't regret protecting myself. I don't regret standing up for myself. And I don't regret proving that just because you're 69 years old doesn't mean you're anybody's fool. Thank you so much for listening to my story today. I hope it resonates with some of you out there who might be dealing with difficult family situations. Remember, it's not selfish to protect yourself, even from family. Sometimes especially from family. If you enjoyed this story, please don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more real-life stories. Drop a comment below letting me know where you're listening from and whether you think I did the right thing. I read every comment, and I love hearing your perspectives. Until next time, this is Mary, reminding you that you're never too old to stand up for yourself. Take care, everyone, and remember, family is supposed to lift you up, not tear you down. Bye for now.